Okay, I'm Christina with thepatricios.com. And my question, I did a little research and I heard the movie was first titled as Split and then it changed to Spellbound. And I was curious if you could elaborate on that a little bit, why it changed and where did you guys come up with Spellbound?
That's really interesting. Yeah, when I joined the project, it was called Split, and the family already was living apart, and the king and queen had their own kingdoms, and they were at war. So it was very literal, right? Which was smart. It was just, granted, it was a very smart take. Elian was going back and forth between these two kingdoms that were at war, and she's trying to like have a normal life, and so it was split. The world was already split. So she, and the log line was she a young princess who can unite her kingdom but not her parents or something like that. But in the end, we found that really the story needed to shift earlier, to that point when it's all happening and it's so confusing to the kid in the situation. The parents are lost in their fighting, their animosity to each other, and this idea of the fairy tale, the allegory of like, well, a spell turn them into monsters, because to her, she doesn't know like what's going on. Maybe if I'm just a really good daughter, if I take care of business, we can fix this. I can break this spell. They'll be back to normal. But it's not up to the kid to do any of that, right? It's up to the parents. So we try to stay really true to this thought. And when doing that, with creating the magic for that, the spell, for a little while, we thought of the title, The Unbreakable Spell, because this spell wasn't breakable. And the spell of love in a family can be unbreakable, right? If it doesn't matter whether the family is together, if there's love, it's an unbreakable bond. So we were also really attached to that name. But, then it was like, well, let's just simplify it. Let's call it Spellbound, because it still has those attributes to it, that they're bound by a spell, but they're also bound by the spell of love to each other and the spell of family.
Thank you. Okay, what do you think gives Spellbound a timeless quality that will make it resonate with audiences for ages and years to come?
That's a great question. Well, I really hope it does. I feel like if we've done it right, the idea of creating, a new fairy tale about a very important aspect of life. I mean, the best myths that really live on, that become fairy tales that get reinvented, every generation, one way or another. At the heart of them, they're revealing a truth about being human, about how we move from one phase to another, how we move from childhood to young adulthood, the coming of age. These stories are they're timeless, even though the trappings change. So here we're taking something that hadn't been dealt with in a fairy tale. So finding the classic approach to it, I think will help it fit into that canon of fairy tales, that it looks and feels like it's been around a long time already. The music feels timeless. The quality of the artwork feels, back in the day when I was a kid going to animated features, which were just a handful of them, but you wanted them to really be real and epic and big and rich, that you'd find yourself in that world. So I'm hoping that with all of those ingredients together, that that's what will happen.
Thank you. Touched on maybe it becoming a Broadway play. And I just have to tell you, I know you worked on Shrek, and we actually are going to see Shrek on Broadway on Sunday, and my kids are just so excited.
Yay.
But my question is more about the music. I'm curious how many songs were made for the movie, and did any get cut that you were wishing might have you been able to fit in? Or I was just curious more about the music, like how many songs were actually made and how many you put in and cut, and how do you decide on that?
Well, yeah, that's really interesting. All the songs were written for this. None of them pre-existed the story at all. And as the story evolved, the some songs, like scenes, when before you animate anything, sometimes they have to get cut. I mean, we adjusted the story partway through development to when we hit on this allegory of the monsters. So yeah, some things did shift. A couple songs disappeared. There was a song the oracles were going to sing about how to break the spell, and it was a hilarious song. But it ended up being just funnier for the monster mom to eat him. and not let them finish. And that's what drew Elian into the forest to go find them, right? So it worked out better story-wise than if they gave her the answer there in Act One. So some of those things turned into, a really good solution. But there was one song, the Once Upon a Time, that little melody that I played earlier. Alan wrote this beautiful little thing. It would be like our prologue that talked about the king and queen and princess. So I think one day we did a storyboard of it, like a little paper doll kind of thing. And it was lovely. But if, in the end, starting with more of a bang, you meet her on her griffin, living the life she should be. Then you see she can't. And then she shows you her whole life in that first song. And it just felt like you got to dive right in, rather than come in sort of a sweet, melancholy way. But I loved it. It was a really beautiful fairy tale song.
Thank you.